Have you guys heard about what the CIA did when they were running human experiments to figure out how to mind control? No? Okay, I'll tell you about it. In the late 1940s, early 1950s, the Cold War was at its peak. And the United States was convinced that they needed to do something big, something new that would give them a significant advantage over anyone. And the decision was made that that would be mind control. If they were able to develop mind control, it would prove to be extremely beneficial, especially in a war. Not only could they manipulate human behavior and rule the entire world, but they could also use it against their enemies in their favor to extract information and influence foreign leaders. They would have a one-up on everyone, and that was music to their ears. But in order to do so, it would take a lot of trial and error and testing and experiments to figure out what worked and what didn't. And for that reason, in 1953, Project MK Ultra came to be. The idea of it was to find unsuspecting persons, ordinary people. These were people such as unhoused people on the streets, prisoner, mentally ill patients, random civilians, at times even college students, children, all unwilling participants to take and conduct human experiments on. The target audience was later described to be, quote, people who could not fight back. And the experiments and the tests, by the way, had no limits. They were physical, mental, emotional. This went on from 1953 into the 1970s for 20 whole years, and it took millions and millions of dollars to fund. These experiments would take place in a variety of places, such as universities, research foundations. There are even some reports of some of them having happened in prisons. And in case it wasn't obvious, this was a top secret operation by the CIA. By the way, it was secretly funded. The entire thing being led by Sidney Gottlieb, an American chemist. Sidney Gottlieb was determined to find ways to manipulate, break down, and completely erase human consciousness. He wanted to figure out how to completely destroy human mind in order to then build it back up the way that he wanted to. And some of the things they were trying out were specifically they were also doing electroshock and sensory deprivation. Let's talk about one specific person that was experimented on, just to give you an idea of how these things happened, even though it happened differently for everyone because there was such a wide variety of tests and experiments and things. James Whitey Bulger. In the 1950s, James was serving time in prison when he volunteered for what he was told was a medical study to find a cure for schizophrenia. In exchange, they told him that he would get 3 days off of his sentence for every single month that he participated. Of course, there was no medical study. What actually happened was that James Bulger, along with 7 other inmates, were locked in a basement room every single week and given massive doses of. This is how James described it himself years later, quote, "In minutes, the would take over, and about 8 or 9 men, Dr. Pfeiffer and several men in suits who were not doctors, would give us tests to see how we reacted. 8 convicts in a panic and paranoid state, total loss of appetite, hallucinating, the room would change shape, hours of paranoia and feeling violent. We experienced horrible periods of living nightmares and even coming out of the walls, guys turning to skeletons in front of me. I saw a camera change into the head of a dog. I felt like I was going insane." And while they were in this crazy, unstable state of mind, the supervising doctor would come in and start asking them leading questions such as, would you ever commit murder? What would you do? How would you do it? James experienced this more than 50 times, and prior to the experiments, he wasn't known to have murdered anyone. But after them, he is believed to have committed at least 11 murders. One of the jurors who convicted him in 2013 later on said that she regretted finding him guilty after finding out about everything that he was put through during MK Ultra. Information that his lawyers, for whatever reason, never brought up in trial. James was never the same person after this. He later wrote that the experiments completely destroyed his ability to sleep. He suffered nightmares, amongst other things, for the rest of his life. On a different occasion, Sidney Gottlieb decided not to test prisoners, but instead his own scientists that worked for him. He invited a group of them over to his house for, I think, some sort of dinner, and without their knowledge, he gave all of them. Sidney wanted to do this because he wanted to be able to ask them questions about things that only they knew about to see if he could control their mind in the way that they answered these questions, and also to see if they would betray him and spill their secrets. When everyone began to feel weird and slowly but surely began to hallucinate, only then was Sidney like, oh yeah, I gave you all. Let's see what happens. One of the men at this dinner was Dr. Frank Olson. When the men realized what was going on, some of them handled it relatively well. 43-year-old Dr. Frank Olson was not one of them. Over the next 9 days after that night, Dr. Frank Olson felt like he was losing his mind. He told his wife that he had made a terrible mistake, but never explained what he meant. He was agitated, he was paranoid, he felt like he was in a permanent state of confusion. So much so that he went back to Sidney Gottlieb and he was like, man, I am losing it, I don't know what to do. And Sidney was like, okay, dude, no worries, we'll take you to go see a doctor. So he flew to New York, checked into a hotel room, and got ready to work with a psychiatrist to work on how to get his mind back to a normal state. But then on November 28th of 1953 at 2:25 in the morning, he jumps out from the 13th floor. He couldn't take it anymore. The CIA's official story was ruling it an unaliving following a fatal nervous breakdown. And for 22 years, Frank Olson's family did not know that he had been under CIA supervision when he passed. The man in the hotel room with him, Robert Lashbrook, was another CIA chemist, later claimed that he was asleep when Frank went out of the window. But one report that I read said that Robert didn't leave the room. He didn't call the police. Instead, he made a phone call to an unidentified CIA contact and said he's gone. In 1975, the government paid Frank Olson's family $750,000 to avoid a lawsuit. There were also different kinds of experiments, for example, using electroconvulsive therapy, which is like electrical currents being passed through the brain. They were doing that, but about 30 to 40 times its normal power. They were putting mentally ill patients into comas for weeks or months at a time. They were recording patients talking about their biggest fears and then replaying those recordings over and over and over again. Like they would take that recording, put speakers all over the room, like in the ceilings of the room, even putting speakers inside of their pillows. So the patients would just have to listen to themselves in their own voice talking about their biggest fears over and over and over again for days nonstop. The goal was literally to destroy a human brain and then figure out how to build it back up and rewire it in order to be able to control it. It's so horrible. Patients who were subjected to these experiments and these projects suffered from all kinds of issues for the rest of their lives, even forgetting how to talk, forgetting family members' names, forgetting everything, because they were just left in this permanent state of delusion, basically. MK Ultra came to an end when the president at the time, Nixon, fired the CIA's Inspector General in 1973 for being disloyal. The CIA's Inspector General, Richard Helms, was Sidney Gottlieb's right-hand man. And now with him being fired, Richard realizes that he is a problem. He is one of the only people who knows the full scope of what Sidney Gottlieb was doing during MK Ultra. He knows that if those files ever become public, people would probably go to prison, possibly including him. So before leaving the office, Richard Helms calls Sidney Gottlieb in for a meeting and they make a decision: destroy everything. Destroy as much evidence as they possibly could. Sidney Gottlieb personally drives out to the CIA Records Center and orders the staff to destroy boxes and boxes and boxes of MK Ultra files. And we're talking about records from at least 150 separate sub-projects spanning over 2 decades, mind you. And I hate to say it, but it worked. Sort of. I mean, not everything was completely destroyed because obviously we have some information. That is how I told you what I just told you, but that's probably not even the tip of the iceberg of what really went down, which is so scary to think about. It was honestly kind of hard finding information on this because I feel like there's obviously a limited amount of information. So if you guys do know about this and you happen to have some information that I didn't mention, please comment it because I'm so curious and scared. But that is it from me today. Thank you for spending time with me today. Hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day, make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.